Hi everybody, welcome back to Sociology. Today we're going to be talking about a very powerful, controversial, and extremely dark concept in race and ethnicity, and that is of genocide and ethnic cleansing. You could call these concepts the ultimate expression of racism. This is as far as humans can go in terms of darkness when they follow the paths of racism and the other. These concepts have followed humans throughout their history, all right, but unfortunately they've seemed to become more prevalent in the last 100 years or so, which is a very interesting thing. There's some reasons why, or some speculation as why at least. Well, before we get into this dark topic, let's do some definitions here. Okay, they are different or slightly different depending on who you ask. Again, there's a little bit of controversy here involved. Start with ethnic cleansing. Now, ethnic cleansing usually, well, I'll just give the definition here from dictionary, is the mass expulsion or killing of members of an unwanted ethnic or religious group in a society. Ethnic is one of the key words there. All right, so ethnic cleansing wouldn't necessarily be when you remove for political reasons. They're including religious reasons here. Again, these terms are poorly defined. But ethnic cleansing generally means you want to take your society and you want to remove all foreign objects or people, foreign people, all right, but they're considered objects to when using the other. They're not people anymore when you get rid of them. You want to make a homogeneous society and you want them all to be the same. If you want a society where everyone's the same, you're going to have to remove anybody that's different. This is what we think of when we think of ethnic cleansing. Genocide is slightly different. Dictionary.com is a deliberate killing of a large group of people, which can be ethnic reasons, political, or religious as well. So, to recap, ethnic cleansing is when you want to get rid of a people and their culture from an area. Genocide is when you want to remove them from the face of the earth. So, in some ways, you could say that ethnic cleansing is genocide light, but we're mincing words here. This is a very difficult thing that society and the international community have not been very good about talking about. Mainly because you have to often take responsibility for your society's own actions. But it happens, okay? So it's something that we need to look at. Again, this is a tricky topic, and when you start to think about the mass killing or mass expulsions of people, it doesn't get much darker in terms of human society. There could be some complicating ideas of what the difference between war and, say, genocide is, because often genocide comes under the cover of war. So if you were to invade a people and kill them, which, say, happened in the case of Rome and Carthage, and then eliminate or enslave them, the Romans would have considered that war. The Carthaginians probably would have considered that genocide, as in that they were all now dead. So it can be complicated, as I mentioned again. I'm probably going to mention further as we go along because it's a tricky subject. Now, so we did some definitions. But let's talk about some differences. Okay, I've already mentioned a few. Here's one of the most important differences, is that genocide is officially recognized by the international community. I don't know how much you guys know about the international community, but it is basically what you think of the United Nations, the IMF, okay, any type of group that, there's the Paris Agreement, which is part of the international community, which we are no longer a member of. But essentially it's when different countries get together to try to make decisions. A lot of people don't like the fact that there is an international community, but when something's happening within a nation, and we'll see this in a minute, something's happening within a nation, say people are getting slaughtered, it would take the international community to stop that from happening. Sometimes the international community has done that, sometimes they haven't. So they have attempted to define what we now know as genocide. Of course, this came out of World War II with the most infamous case of genocide, which was the Holocaust, which was killing of Jews and other groups within Germany and Europe during World War II. Following that, the international community said, well, this is a stain. We cannot let this happen again. All right. If Europe wants to control the world, then Europe should be responsible for maintaining its safety. This was the thinking of the people at the time. So they drew up a definition of genocide and declared it illegal. They've had mixed results in enforcing that law, international law, over the last 70 years now. But they've at least been made an attempt. Ethnic cleansing, on the other hand, has no international definition. Now, when you break international law, say you start committing genocide, by law, international law, which is what it is, the nations of the world are supposed to come together and prevent or stop the genocide. They're supposed to stop this ethnic killing. Sometimes they, well, I've already said that. Sorry, it's just a difficult subject, especially when you're reading about genocide. The reason ethnic cleansing is not illegal is because it is, well, a lot of nations do it, okay? A lot of nations have expelled people based on ethnic reasons. And their argument is, well, we want our nation to be what we want our nation to be. Maybe that sounds familiar to some of you because it may not be so far from home where some of these ideas happen. But let's take a step back real quickly to understand why ethnic cleansing or genocide might happen. To understand that, at least in the modern sense, we need to know what nationalism is. Nationalism, another definition. Now this is when you identify with your own nation, often in the exclusion, okay, or detriment to other nations, which is a little bit different than what's known as patriotism. Patriotism is a fervent love of one's nation. This is like, I really love my nation, I'm patriotic. We often think of that as a good thing. Nationalism, on the other hand, is somewhat pejorative, depending on who you ask. If you would say, I would like all the other nations of the world to burn in fire, but I love my nation, I want my nation to stay, you would think of that as more nationalistic, in that you care about your nation first and foremost. This goes a little bit back to social identity. If you ask people who they are, what they are, and they say, I am, and they first words out of their mouth are their country or their nation, that's a very nationalistic attitude. And if you put your priorities, say, of your nation first and foremost, above your family or above your religion or above the world in general, these are also very nationalistic ideas. Now, we often think of patriotism as a very good thing, and where that can slip into nationalism is a very gray area, and depending on who you ask, you'll have different definitions and answers to that. If you think of nationalism, however, it often means, well, how good can your nation be? And what will make your nation stronger? Would eliminating all handicapped persons in your nation make it stronger? A lot of people have argued that. We've talked about euthanasia. There's been arguments that they are just a burden on society. Why build handicap ramps? That's wasted money that we could put to other uses. These are nationalistic ideas that people talk about. Why would we not invade a neighboring nation if they're weaker than us? Okay, we could simply destroy them and take all their resources. This is nationalistic thinking. Now you may think that there's an easy argument for that, but that can be very unconvincing to a lot of people who really feel that their nation should be stronger and the other nations be damned. You can see if you apply racial and ethnic sensibilities to this concept of nationalism, how quickly it can devolve into what we would know as ethnic cleansing. If I want my nation to be strong, and by the way, Hitler, he comes up a lot, expressed this quite clearly. He wanted Germany to be strong. He believed that there was ethnic issues within his own country and Europe in general that needed elimination. Okay, so he went to genocide, but he also started with ethnic cleansing. This is where these definitions get gray, or the lines between them do. So that if he removed all Jews or gypsies or homosexuals or Freemasons, that he could make his nation stronger. He could make Germany stronger. The end goal was to make all humanity stronger, which meant to essentially eliminate anyone on the earth who wasn't Jewish, or German, excuse me. Now that may sound like a ridiculous concept, but if you are a fervent German in early 1930s and are very much worried about you and yours and the other be damned, whether the other is Polish or gypsies or whomever, then this ideology of nationalism can be extremely appealing. If someone tells you, I'm going to remove people who aren't you, the other, and I'm going to make your life better as a result. Now you may say, well, I would never buy that. Well, people do buy that, and people have bought that, and people have killed to make their lives better. And ethnic and religious and racial differences make that all the easier. So, there are plenty of examples of ethnic cleansing, all right, where you remove people. And then there's plenty of examples of genocide as well. Now, this is a little bit different, I could say. I don't know how accurate it would be, but I could say that there are smaller acts, for instance, massacres. Massacres are not necessarily considered ethnic cleansing, although they often have a tinge of ethnic cleansing. Tulsa race riots are a good example of that, which are similar to, there's also a concept called a pogrom, which is P-O-G-R-O-M, which is a word you hopefully haven't heard of and is complicated to teach. But a pogrom is essentially a small massacre based on racial or religious reasons. This is when it happened a lot in the Middle Ages, where someone, let's say there was an outbreak of a disease, and they went to the local leaders, and the local leaders said, it's probably those Jews on the outside of town, we should go kill them, and then that'll help cure this disease. And this happened over and over again. And the town folk would go out and slaughter all the Jews in the outside town, and then in theory you would have cured the disease. Pogroms are not as well documented. We know that they exist in history, but the reason they're not well documented is because the people that had the pogrom enacted upon them are now dead, so they can't necessarily write it down. And the victors often, it's an impulse thing very often. Victors, that's not exactly the right word, the killers don't necessarily want the world and history to know that they just massacred a whole bunch of people because of some superstitious belief. But these pogroms have existed and massacres have existed throughout history. Last thing we'll talk about here in this video is in America, okay, because that's where we're at. Now, have ethnic cleansing and genocidal acts occurred in the United States of America? Well, again, I guess it would be who you would ask. We do know that the continent was populated by Native Americans prior to the arrival of Europeans. Now, the vast majority of them were killed by disease. So, without any understanding of germ theory, I don't think you could say that that was intentional. However, there was plenty of killing and ethnic cleansing and removal of peoples. So, whether you call what happened to the Native Americans in the Americas genocide or ethnic cleansing, some would argue it's a moot point at this point because the act had been done. Obviously, there has been acts of ethnic cleansing here in America in other ways, okay, where people say, I want my area to be like this. Here in Arizona, you could say that there was acts of ethnic cleansing. There's always been. All right. There was a certain judge here who was elected for very years, who was elected 30-some years based on that concept of keeping keeping Arizona, excuse me, of course I haven't, keeping Arizona a certain way and doing its best to keep a lot of people out, which would make a area more racially pure. Sound familiar? Here's an interesting question I've heard or posed. America just found out that 1/3 of its people would gladly see another third die while the last third watched on. That might seem hyperbolic for you that don't know. That means hyperbolic means an extreme exaggeration. But I think I do know some people who would happily see a third go away, as in just die or whatever, and not feel remorse. I didn't think that about a decade ago, or even 5 years ago. But the more I see of fellow Americans, I can kind of see that being true. I don't know, and I'm not, I mean, it's just a thought, but it's something to think about. Would a third happily see a third die and then another third allow it to happen? That quote came from, or the concept came from a German that had happened in his own country. So he was well aware that it was possible. It's scary to think how close we might be from slipping from what we know as a civilized society into something that desperate and horrible. Yet again, it has happened. So these two concepts are about as horrible, and there's plenty of examples, and you will be having assignments to look this up or investigate some of these examples on your own. I didn't mean to leave the semester dark, but I guess I left it serious. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.